Before we begin, if you're finding value in these stories from tribal law enforcement, please take a moment to subscribe and hit that like button. It helps us continue sharing these important accounts. And I'm curious, where are you watching from tonight? Drop your location in the comments. Now, let's talk about Standing Rock, about 2016, and about the officer who heard his own death on the radio. I'm Kevin Ironcloud, and I have things to tell you about the worst year of my life by far. The year I learned that time is not a line, but a frequency. If you know how to tune in correctly, you might be able to hear everything that could happen in the past, present, and future, including your own death. It was November 2016, and Standing Rock had become the center of the world. The Dakota Access Pipeline protest had brought thousands of people to our reservation. Water protectors from over 300 tribes, plus non-native allies, journalists, veterans, activists. The Oceti-Sakowin camp stretched across the prairie like a temporary city. Teepees and tents and RVs, smoke from cooking fires rising into the North Dakota sky. I was a tribal police officer, had been for 8 years, and I was caught in the middle. On one side, my people. The water protectors fighting to stop a pipeline that threatened the Missouri River, our only water source. They weren't wrong. The pipeline route had originally been planned to cross near Bismarck, but they moved it when white residents complained. Moved it to us instead, because our water, our safety, our future apparently didn't matter as much. On the other side, my badge, my duty to maintain order, to coordinate with state and federal law enforcement, to follow orders even when those orders felt wrong in my gut. My wife, Kylie, understood the position I was in, but she didn't like it. She was a nurse at the IHS clinic, and she'd been treating protesters injured in confrontations with police. Hypothermia from water cannons in freezing weather. Impact injuries from rubber bullets. Pepper spray burns. She came home every night exhausted and angry, and some of that anger was directed at me. "You could quit," she said one night as we were getting ready for bed. Our kids were asleep down the hall. "You could stand with the people instead of standing between them and the state police. I'm trying to protect people, Kylie, on both sides. You think it would be better if I wasn't there? If it was just BIA and state police with no one who actually cares about our community. I think you're using that as an excuse to avoid choosing a side." Maybe she was right, I don't know. All I knew was that every shift felt like walking a tightrope, trying to de-escalate situations, trying to keep people from getting hurt, trying to do my job without betraying my conscience. It was on one of those shifts, November 20th, that everything changed. I was on patrol near the northern edge of the reservation, monitoring the back roads where protesters sometimes tried to access the pipeline construction site. It was late, almost midnight, cold enough that my breath fogged the windshield. The radio chatter was quiet. Most of the action was happening further south, near the main camp. Then I got a call from Captain Jim Roberts, our chief. "Ironcloud, we've got a missing person, Maya Blackstone, 23 from the camp. Last seen this afternoon heading north on foot. Family's worried she might be lost or hurt." Maya Blackstone, I knew the name. She was one of the organizers, a Diné woman from Arizona who'd been at Standing Rock since August. Smart, passionate, always the first one to step between protesters and police, always trying to keep things peaceful. "Copy that. I'm in the north sector now. I'll start a search." I spent the next hour driving the back roads, stopping periodically to get out and call Maya's name. Nothing. The prairie was dark and vast, easy to get turned around if you didn't know the land. And Maya wasn't from here. She could have wandered miles in the wrong direction. Around 1 a.m., I decided to try the radio. Not the police radio, my personal HAM radio that I kept in the truck. I'd been an amateur radio operator since I was a teenager, and I knew the frequencies that the camp organizers used to coordinate. Maybe someone had seen her. I tuned to 146.52 megahertz, the common calling frequency. This is KD0TC calling, looking for any information on Maya Blackstone, last seen this afternoon North Sector. Anyone copy? Static. Then faintly a voice, speaking Lakota. Wichasha wan akichita opawinge. Cavalry coming. Hundreds of them. I sat up straight. The voice was old-fashioned, formal Lakota, the kind my grandmother spoke. And the message didn't make sense. Cavalry? Say again, you're breaking up. This is Officer Iron Cloud with Standing Rock Tribal Police. The voice got clearer. Omaka owangjila ungyangpikta. We will see one winter. They are coming from the east. Tell the people to prepare. My skin prickled. This wasn't right. No one at the camp spoke Lakota like that, with that formal dialect. And cavalry? I checked the frequency, 146.52, right where it should be. But the transmission was wrong. The quality was off, like it was coming from equipment that didn't exist anymore. Who is this? Identify yourself. Changpei Opi Wakhon Gyang, Wounded Knee Creek, December 28th, year 1890. The cavalry is gathering at Pine Ridge. Tell Sitanka and the people to run. Run now before. The transmission cut to static. I sat there in my truck, hands shaking on the steering wheel. 1890. Wounded Knee. The massacre that killed over 300 of my ancestors, including women and children. The deadliest massacre in American Indian history. And I'd just heard a warning transmission from the night before it happened. That was impossible. That was insane. Radio technology barely existed in 1890, and certainly not in Lakota camps. This had to be some kind of prank, someone using old recordings, screwing with the frequencies. But the voice had sounded so real, so desperate. I grabbed my personal notebook and wrote down what I'd heard, the exact words, the frequency, the time. Then I went back to searching for Maya. I found her 3 hours later, just before dawn. She'd twisted her ankle in a prairie dog hole and couldn't walk far. She was cold and scared, but okay. I drove her back to camp, made sure the medics checked her out, and filed my report. I didn't mention the radio transmission. I didn't know how to explain it, and I didn't want to end up in a psychological evaluation. But that night, after my shift ended, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I went home, kissed Kylie and the kids, and then locked myself in the garage with my radio equipment. I had a better setup at home. A Yaesu FT857D transceiver, various antennas, a scanner that could pick up everything from AM to FM to shortwave. I'd spent years collecting equipment, listening to everything from local weather reports to international broadcasts to old numbers stations. If there were impossible transmissions out there, I was going to find them. I started with 146.52 again, the frequency where I'd heard the 1890 message, static. I waited, scanning slowly through nearby frequencies. At 88.1 FM, I heard it again. This time it was different voices. Multiple people, speaking rapidly in Lakota, panic in their tones. The soldiers have cannons. They're surrounding the camp. Bigfoot is sick. He can't lead us out. What do we do? Where do we go? Stay calm. Stay together. We surrendered. They can't hurt us. We surrendered. The children are crying. They're so cold. Please, we need... Then the sound of gunfire. Distant at first, then closer, screaming, chaos. The transmission degraded into static, but I could still hear echoes of it. People crying out in Lakota, children screaming, men shouting orders, the pop-pop-pop of rifles. I was listening to Wounded Knee. In real time, as it happened. I ripped the headphones off, my heart racing. This couldn't be real. It had to be a recording, an audio dramatization someone had put together. But the voices were so immediate, so raw. You couldn't fake that kind of terror. I sat there for a long time, staring at the radio. Then, slowly, I reached for the dial again. If I could hear 1890, what else could I hear? I started scanning. 88.1 seemed to be locked onto Wounded Knee, the transmission cycling through what sounded like the same 24-hour period leading up to the massacre. I moved up the dial. At 91.7 FM, I found something else. A man's voice, younger, speaking English with a Dakota accent. "This is Dennis Banks at Wounded Knee, calling any media that can hear us. It's March 2nd, 1973. We are under siege by federal forces. They have APCS, automatic weapons. They've cut our electricity and water. We are asking for witnesses, for journalists, for anyone who can document what's happening here. The government is trying to erase us again, just like 1890. We need the world to know we are still here. We will not be erased." The Wounded Knee occupation. When members of the American Indian movement took over the town to protest government corruption and treaty violations. It lasted 71 days, ended with 2 AIM members dead and dozens wounded. I was hearing radio transmissions from that occupation. Real transmissions, or something that sounded exactly like them. I kept scanning. At 95.3 FM, I heard voices I recognized. Modern voices. People from the Oseti Sakowin camp, coordinating logistics, reporting on police movements, organizing supply runs. "We've got 20 more medics arriving from Denver tomorrow. Need to set up another first aid tent. State police are massing at the Highway 1806 checkpoint. Looks like they're preparing for something. Legal observers, we need you at the front line. Police are making arrests." This was the present. This was now. 2016. So I had 3 frequencies, 3 different time periods, all broadcasting, all accessible. 1890 at 88.1, 1973 at 91.7, 2016 at 95.3. I pulled out my notebook and drew a diagram trying to make sense of it. 3 historical moments, all at Lakota sites, all involving confrontations between my people and the U.S. government, all ending in violence. Was there a pattern? A connection? I spent the next week listening obsessively. During my shifts, I kept a scanner in the truck, one earphone in so I could monitor while I worked. At home, I stayed up late into the night, tuning between the 3 frequencies, taking notes on everything I heard. Kylie noticed. "You're not sleeping. You barely eat. Tom, what's going on?" "Just working on a project, radio stuff. It helps me think." This is about the protests, isn't it? About being torn between your job and your people? She wasn't wrong, but it was more than that. I was hearing history repeat itself over and over. Different years, different circumstances, but the same pattern. My people standing up, the government pushing back, violence erupting. And I didn't know how to stop it. On November 27th, I was listening to the 1890 frequency when I heard something new. A voice I didn't recognize, speaking clear, modern English. "Kevin Ironcloud, Officer Kevin Ironcloud of the Standing Rock Sioux Tribal Police. I know you can hear me. I know you've been listening." I grabbed the microphone. "Who is this? How do you know my name?" "Because I'm you, Kevin. I'm calling from 2017, from the future, and I need to tell you something important." My blood ran cold. "That's not possible. You thought 1890 was impossible. You thought 1973 was impossible. But you heard them anyway. This radio, this frequency, it doesn't follow the rules you think it does. It follows different rules. The rules of history, of trauma, of echoes that never stop echoing. Who are you really? I told you. I'm Kevin Ironcloud. I'm you 1 year from now, and I'm calling to warn you about what's coming. I wanted to hang up, to turn off the radio, to pretend this wasn't happening, but I couldn't. My hand was frozen on the microphone. What's coming? December 4th, 2016. 7 days from now. The state police are going to launch their biggest raid yet. They're going to try to clear the camps, arrest the organizers, break the movement. People are going to get hurt, a lot of people. How do you know this? Because I lived through it. I was there. I tried to stop it, tried to de-escalate, but I failed. I watched people I knew get beaten, arrested, hospitalized, and I stood there in my uniform, following orders, protecting the wrong people. I felt sick. What do you want me to do? I don't know yet. I'm still trying to figure that out. But Kevin, you need to understand something. This isn't just about the pipeline. It's about the pattern. 1890, 1973, 2016. Every time we stand up, every time we say no, they come at us with force. And every time people die. The pattern has to break. Somehow it has to break. How? I don't know. But keep listening. Keep scanning the frequencies. There's one more you haven't found yet. One more year, one more message. When you find it, you'll understand. The transmission cut out. I sat in the garage until Kylie came to find me at 2 a.m., worried because I hadn't come to bed. I told her I was fine, just lost track of time. But I wasn't fine. I was terrified. Someone claiming to be my future self had just called me on a radio that could apparently receive transmissions from the past. And he'd warned me that in 7 days everything was going to fall apart. The next day at work, I pulled Captain Roberts aside. "Sir, I've been hearing chatter about a potential raid on the camps. December 4th. Can you confirm?" Roberts looked uncomfortable. "Where did you hear that?" "Sources. Is it true?" "It's under discussion. The governor's office is pressuring us. They want the camps cleared before winter sets in. They're saying it's for public safety, but..." He trailed off. "But we all know what it's really about. I can't have this conversation with you, Ironcloud. You want to keep your job, you do what you're told. You want to quit and join the protesters, that's your choice. But you can't do both." I wanted to tell him about the radio, about the warnings from 1890 and 1973 and my own future self. But he'd think I'd lost my mind. Maybe I had. That night, I went back to scanning. I tried every frequency between 88.1 and 98.9, looking for the fourth transmission that future me had mentioned. I found it at 98.9 FM. At first, it was just static, but as I fine-tuned the frequency, I started to hear something. A voice, faint, distant, like it was calling from very far away. My voice. "This is Kevin Ironcloud. Final transmission. December 4th, 2017. 1 year exactly. 1 year in the future, just like the other voice had said. I'm recording this because someone needs to know. Someone needs to understand what happened. Why I made the choice I made." I leaned closer to the speaker, straining to hear. "They're saying it was suicide by cop, that I wanted to die, that I snapped under the pressure, but it wasn't that. I knew exactly what I was doing. I had to die, you understand? I had to die so that 300 others could live." My hands started shaking. If you're hearing this, if you're me from the past, you need to understand the pattern. 1890, 300 dead at Wounded Knee. 1973, the siege could have ended the same way, should have ended that way, but someone chose differently. Someone sacrificed, and only 2 died instead of hundreds. 2016, the pattern wants to repeat wants another massacre, wants 300 more. But it doesn't have to happen, not if one person chooses to break it. The transmission was breaking up, degrading into static. Listen to the frequencies, Kevin. Listen to the past, listen to the present, listen to the future. Understand the pattern. And when December 4th comes, when the raid starts, you'll know what to do. You'll know how to save them, even if it costs everything. The transmission cut out completely. I sat there in the dark garage, staring at the radio. December 4th, 2017. 1 year and 7 days from now. According to my own voice from the future, that was the day I was going to die. And according to that same voice, my death was going to save 300 people from a massacre. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. I kept hearing my own voice on that transmission, calm and resigned, explaining why I had to die, talking about it like it was already decided, already done. Was the future fixed, or could I change it? And if I could change it, should I? 300 lives versus 1. The math was obvious. But those 300 were strangers, possibilities, maybes. The one life was mine. My wife, my kids, my future. How do you choose? The next morning, December 1st, I went to see the only person I thought might understand what I was experiencing. Gary Kill's Thunder was 87 years old, a Hunkpapa elder who lived on the northern edge of the reservation. He'd been at Wounded Knee in 1973, had spent 71 days in the occupation, had been one of the negotiators who finally ended the siege without another massacre. I found him in his Kitwild, drinking coffee and listening to a Lakota language radio program. Tunkang Shila, I said, using the respectful term for grandfather. I need to talk to you about something strange. Strange is good, boring is bad. Sit down, grandson. Tell me what's troubling you. I told him everything. The frequencies, the transmissions from 1890 and 1973, the voices from the future, the warning about December 4th. I expected him to think I was crazy, to laugh it off or suggest I see a doctor. Instead, he just nodded slowly. The time speaker, he said. I wondered if it would call again. You know about this? My grandfather told me stories, and his grandfather before him. There have always been people who could hear the frequencies of time, usually during periods of great crisis, great change. They hear the past calling to the present, warning us, trying to break the patterns that trap us. The patterns of violence. Yes, the pattern that says when we stand up, we must be struck down. The pattern that says resistance must end in massacre. It's an old pattern, grandson. Older than Wounded Knee, older than this country. But it can be broken. How? Sacrifice. Not the forced sacrifice of victims, but the chosen sacrifice of a volunteer. Someone who steps forward and says, I will take the blow meant for many. I will break the pattern with my body. That's what happened in 1973? Yes. When the siege was ending, when the government was preparing to rush the bunkers and kill everyone inside, one of our warriors went out alone, unarmed. He walked toward the federal line, hands up, singing his death song. The soldiers didn't know what to do. They held fire. And in that moment of confusion, of hesitation, the negotiators were able to broker a surrender. 2 people died in the whole occupation instead of the hundreds the government had planned for. You're saying I need to do the same thing. Gary looked at me with ancient, sad eyes. I'm saying the frequencies are calling you for a reason, and December 4th is coming whether you're ready or not. I have a family, kids. So did the man who walked out in 1973. So did the people who died at Wounded Knee in 1890. We all have families, Kevin. That's why the pattern is so hard to break, because the price is always someone's loved one. I left Gary's house more confused than ever. I drove aimlessly for a while, ended up parking near the Oseti-Sakowin camp, watching the smoke rise from 100 fires, listening to the sound of drums and songs carrying across the prairie. 300 people in there. Maybe more. All of them willing to risk arrest, injury, hypothermia, to protect the water, to protect the future. And according to the radio, according to my own future voice, most of them were going to die in 3 days unless someone broke the pattern. Unless I broke it. My phone buzzed. Text from Kylie. "Dinner's ready. Kids want to know when you're coming home." I stared at the message for a long time. Then I turned the key and started driving home. I still had 3 days to figure out what to do. 3 days to decide if I believed the transmissions. 3 days to choose between my life and theirs. The radio in my truck crackled with static, and for just a moment I heard my own voice. "Time's running out, Kevin." Tick-tock, and then silence. December 2nd. 2 days until the raid that might or might not happen. 2 days until I might or might not die. I went to work like normal. Patrol routes, incident reports, radio checks. But I couldn't focus. Every time I looked at the protesters at the checkpoints, I saw them differently. Not as problems to manage or situations to de-escalate, but as people. 300 people who might die if I made the wrong choice. Or if I made no choice at all. During my lunch break, I drove to a quiet spot on the reservation and pulled out my portable scanner. I'd been carrying it everywhere, obsessively checking the frequencies, looking for more clues about what was coming. At 91.7 FM, I found something new. The 1973 transmissions had mostly been AM leaders coordinating the occupation, but now I was hearing something different. 2 men talking, their voices tired and strained. "We can't hold out much longer, Russell. They've got us surrounded. They've got the firepower. When they decide to come in, they're going to kill everyone. Then we die fighting. That's what warriors do. That's what warriors did in 1890. Look how that worked out." A long pause. "So, what are you saying, Dennis?" "I'm saying maybe there's another way. A way that doesn't end with all of us dead and the movement crushed." "What other way?" "Someone walks out, alone, unarmed, makes themselves the target, draws all the fire, all the attention, all the violence, while everyone else surrenders quietly. That's suicide. That's sacrifice. There's a difference." Another pause. "Who would do it?" "I would." "You're the leader, Dennis. We need you." "I'm expendable. The movement isn't." The transmission shifted, jumped forward in time. Different voices now, federal negotiators. "The situation has de-escalated. 1 casualty during the surrender process, but the rest have come out peacefully. Repeat, siege is ending without further bloodshed." I sat there with my hand on the radio dial, understanding, clicking into place. That was the pattern. That was how it broke. In 1890, nobody knew to break it. The people at Wounded Knee didn't know what was coming, couldn't prepare, couldn't choose. They were massacred. In 1973, someone figured it out. Someone chose to be the sacrifice, the lightning rod, the one death that prevented hundreds. And now, in 2016, the pattern was trying to repeat. But this time, I had warning. I had the transmissions. I knew what was coming. I also knew what I had to do to stop it. I just didn't know if I had the courage. That night I went back to Gary Kills Thunder's house. He was expecting me. "You look like a man who's made a decision but wishes he hadn't," he said as I sat down at his Kit Wild table. "I need to know more about the time speaker. Everything you know." Gary poured us both coffee and settled into his chair with the patience of someone who had told many stories over many years. "The time speaker is not a person," he began. It's a gift, or a curse depending on how you see it. It appears during times when the pattern is about to repeat. Times when our people are facing another wounded knee, another massacre, another ending. How does it work? The old ones said that trauma tears holes in time. When enough pain happens in one place, when enough blood is spilled, when enough grief is created, it damages the fabric of the years, and through those holes, voices can travel. Forward and back, present to past, future to now. So, the transmissions I'm hearing are real? They're actually from those times? As real as anything. And you're hearing them because you have the gift. Because time itself has chosen you to be the one who listens, who understands, who breaks the pattern. Why me? Gary smiled sadly. Because you're in the right place, with the right knowledge at the right time. You're a tribal cop, so you're caught between worlds. You understand both sides. You have a radio, so you have the tool to listen, and you have a choice in front of you that most people never have to make. The choice to die. The choice to sacrifice. There's a difference. I'd heard that before in the 1973 transmission. What's the difference? Dying is what happens to you. Sacrifice is what you choose to do. Dying is an ending. Sacrifice is an exchange. You give up one thing to gain another. In 1973, Dennis Banks was ready to sacrifice himself, but in the end, it was someone else who walked out. A young warrior named Joseph Stuntz. He drew the fire, took the bullets meant for the bunkers, and because of his sacrifice, the siege ended peacefully. Joseph Stuntz. I knew that name from the history books. He was the only AIM member killed during the actual occupation. Not during the fighting, but during the surrender. So, the pattern was broken in 1973 because one person chose to die? Chose to take the violence that was meant for many and make it about one. Yes. And you think I need to do the same thing? I think the frequencies are calling you for a reason, grandson. I think December 4th is coming. I think 300 people are going to die unless someone stops it. And I think you're the one who has been chosen to make that choice. But what if the raid doesn't happen? What if it's not as bad as the transmissions say? What if I die for nothing? Then you die for nothing. Or you die believing you did the right thing. Either way, you're dead. The question is whether you can live with letting 300 others die when you could have prevented it. I drove home that night in silence, the weight of the choice crushing down on me. When I pulled into the driveway, I sat in the car for a long time, staring at my house. The lights were on. I could see Kylie moving around in the Kitwild, the kids watching TV in the living room. My life, my family, my future. All of it on one side of the scale. 300 strangers on the other. I went inside, kissed Kylie, helped the kids with their homework, acted like everything was normal. But that night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed next to Kylie, staring at the ceiling, listening to her breathe. At 2 a.m., I gave up and went to the garage. I turned on the radio and scanned through all 4 frequencies. 88.1 was still broadcasting from Wounded Knee, 1890, the night before the massacre. 91.7 was repeating transmissions from the Wounded Knee occupation. 95.3 was carrying modern chatter from the protest camps. And 98.9, my own voice from 1 year in the future, kept repeating the same message. I had to die so that 300 others could live. I grabbed the microphone. If you can hear me, if you're really me from the future, talk to me. Tell me what to do. Static. Then, faintly, you already know what to do, Kevin. I don't want to die. I have kids. I have a wife. I have a life. So did I. So did Joseph's stunts. So did the people at Wounded Knee who didn't have a choice. You have a choice, that's the difference. What happens on December 4th, exactly? The state police launch a dawn raid. They have APCS, riot gear, military-grade equipment. They're coming in hard, planning to arrest everyone, clear the camps by force. The plan is overwhelming shock and awe. But something goes wrong. Someone fights back, then someone else. Within minutes, it's chaos. Rubber bullets turn to real bullets. People are trampled. Hypothermia sets in. By the time it's over, 314 people are dead. The second Wounded Knee massacre. Unless I stop it. Unless you break the pattern, you go out alone. Before the raid starts, you position yourself between the police and the camps. And when they come, you don't move. You stand there, unarmed, singing, just like Joseph's stunts did, just like the warriors at Wounded Knee would have done if they'd known. And they kill me. Yes, but it breaks their momentum. It creates hesitation. It forces them to slow down, to second guess, to pull back. And in that space, the leadership on both sides can negotiate. The raid is called off. The camps survive. 314 people will go home to their families. Except me. Except you. I sat there holding the microphone, my hands shaking. I don't know if I can do this. You have 2 more days to decide. But Kevin, you need to prepare. You need to make recordings, leave messages for Kylie and the kids. You need to get your affairs in order. Because whether you're ready or not, December 4th is coming. The transmission cut out. I looked at the clock. 2:47 a.m., December 3rd. Just over 24 hours until the raid that might end with my death. I pulled out my phone and started recording a video. Kylie, if you're watching this, it means I'm gone. And I need you to know that I didn't leave you. I didn't give up. I made a choice. A hard choice, maybe the hardest I've ever made. But it was the right choice. I recorded for 20 minutes trying to explain the unexplainable. The frequencies, the transmissions, the pattern, the sacrifice. Trying to make her understand why I had to die to save people we'd never met. Then I recorded messages for each of my kids, telling them I loved them, telling them to be strong, telling them their father had tried to do something good. I hid the files on a cloud server with instructions to email them to Kylie if I didn't log in for 48 hours. Then I sat there in the garage until dawn, listening to the radio, hearing the past and the present and the future all bleeding together. December 3rd was the longest day of my life. Every minute felt like an hour, every hour like a day. I went to work, tried to act normal, but I could feel the weight of what was coming pressing down on me. Captain Roberts called a meeting at 1400 hours. All tribal police officers, mandatory attendance. We gathered in the conference room. Roberts looked grim. I've just been informed by the governor's office and the BIA that a coordinated action is planned for tomorrow morning, December 4th, at 0500 hours. State Police, BIA law enforcement, and National Guard will be conducting a sweep of the protest camps to enforce eviction orders and make arrests for trespassing. My blood ran cold. It was real. The raid was happening. Our role will be traffic control and perimeter security. We are not to engage directly with protesters. We're there to support state and federal law enforcement. Questions? One of the younger officers raised his hand. Sir, is this safe? The camp has thousands of people. If we go in hard like that, someone's going to get hurt. The plan has been approved at the highest levels. Our job is to follow orders. I wanted to stand up and shout. I wanted to tell them about the transmissions, about the pattern, about the 314 people who were going to die. But I stayed silent. They'd think I was crazy. They'd remove me from duty, maybe commit me for evaluation. I needed to be there tomorrow. I needed to be in position. After the meeting, I pulled Roberts aside. "Sir, I'd like to request assignment to the northwest perimeter, near the Osati-Sakowin camp." "Why?" "I know that area best, and I have relationships with some of the camp leaders. If things get tense, I might be able to help de-escalate." Roberts studied me for a moment. "All right, northwest perimeter, 0430 report time. Don't make me regret this, Iron Cloud." I went home for what I knew would be my last dinner with my family. Kylie had made fry bread and beef stew. The kids were excited because school was canceled for some teacher training day. It was perfect, normal, everything I was about to lose. I held on to every moment. The way Kylie laughed at one of our son's jokes, the way our daughter showed me a drawing she'd made, the warmth of the house, the smell of food, the sound of my family. I memorized it all. That night, after the kids were asleep, Kylie and I sat on the couch together. She knew something was wrong. She could always tell. "Tom, you've been different the past few days. Distant. Are you okay?" I wanted to tell her everything. About the radio, about the choice, about tomorrow. But how do you tell your wife you're going to die in the morning? "I love you," I said instead. "I need you to know that. No matter what happens, no matter what you hear, I love you and the kids more than anything." She looked at me with concern. "You're scaring me. What's going on?" "Promise me something. Promise me that if something happens to me, you'll tell the kids I tried to do the right thing, that I tried to protect people. Tom, promise me. I promise. But nothing's going to happen to you. You're going to be fine." I held her tight, breathing in the smell of her hair, feeling her heart beat against my chest, trying to hold on to this moment forever. We went to bed around 11. Kylie fell asleep quickly, but I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, counting down the hours. At 2 a.m., I got up quietly and went to the garage one last time. I turned on the radio and tuned to 98.9. If you're there, if you can hear me, I need to know I'm making the right choice. My future voice answered immediately, clearer than it had ever been. "You are, Kevin. I know it's hard, I know it's terrifying, but you're making the right choice. 314 people are going to live because of what you do tomorrow. 314 families that won't be destroyed. That's worth it. That has to be worth it. Will it hurt?" A pause. "Yes, but not for long." "And you're sure? You're absolutely sure this is the only way?" "I've lived through the alternative, Kevin. I've seen what happens if you don't go out there. I've stood over the mass graves. I've listened to the mothers crying. I've watched the news coverage of the second Wounded Knee massacre. And I've spent every day since wishing I'd been brave enough to stop it. You have that chance. You have the courage I didn't have. I don't feel courageous. I feel terrified. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's moving forward despite it. You know what needs to be done. Now you just have to do it. Will Kylie understand? Eventually. Maybe not at first. Maybe not for years. But eventually, she'll understand that you were a warrior. That you fought the only way you could. That you broke the pattern." I sat there in silence, the weight of the decision settling into finality. "Okay," I said finally. "I'll do it. I'll go out there tomorrow. I'll break the pattern. Thank you, Kevin. You're doing the right thing. You're saving lives. You're a hero." "I don't feel like a hero. Heroes never do. That's what makes them heroes." The transmission started to break up. "Kevin, one more thing. When you go out there tomorrow, when you're standing between the police and the camps, remember that you're not alone. Every person who ever sacrificed for our people will be standing with you. Every warrior who ever chose the many over the one. You're part of that tradition now, part of that honor. Will I see you again, on the other side? I am you, Kevin. We're the same person. When you die tomorrow, I'll cease to exist too. This timeline will collapse, replaced by a new one, a better one, where 314 people live. Then this is goodbye. This is goodbye. Walk in beauty, brother. And thank you for having the courage I never did. The transmission cut to static. I sat there for a long time, then turned off the radio and went back to bed. I lay next to Kylie, listening to her breathe, feeling the warmth of her body next to mine. In 5 hours, I would get up, get dressed, and drive to the northwest perimeter of the Oseti-Sakowin camp. In 6 hours, the state police would begin their raid. In 7 hours, I would walk out alone, unarmed, and position myself between 314 people and the violence meant for them. And in 8 hours, I would be dead. But 314 people would be alive. That had to be enough. I closed my eyes and tried to sleep. Tomorrow, I was going to break the pattern. Tomorrow, I was going to become the sacrifice. Tomorrow, I was going to die so that others could live. And somewhere, on a radio frequency that existed outside of time, my voice would echo through the years, warning others, guiding them, helping them make the same impossible choice. The time speaker would continue, the pattern would break, and the massacres would end. At least for now, at least for today, that would have to be enough. My alarm went off at 0400 hours, but I was already awake. I'd been staring at the ceiling for the past hour, watching the darkness slowly lighten into gray. My last morning. I got up quietly, trying not to wake Kylie. In the bathroom, I looked at myself in the mirror. Kevin Iron Cloud, 36 years old, husband, father, tribal police officer. Soon to be dead. I thought I'd look different, knowing what was coming, but I looked the same. Maybe a little more tired, maybe a little more sad, but the same. I put on my uniform for the last time. The badge felt heavier than usual. I checked my service weapon, then made a decision and left it in the safe. I wouldn't need it. The transmissions had been clear. I had to go out unarmed. In the Kit Wild, I found Kylie making coffee. She looked up when I came in, and I saw the concern in her eyes. "You're up early. Have to report at 0430. Big operation today." "The camps?" I nodded. She set down her coffee mug and came to me, wrapped her arms around me. "Be safe. Please." I held her tight, breathing in the smell of her, memorizing the feel of her against me. "I love you. More than anything, I love you too. Come home safe." If only I could. I went to check on the kids. They were still asleep. My son, 10 years old, sprawled across his bed with his blanket kicked off. My daughter, 7, clutching her favorite stuffed animal. I kissed them both on the forehead, whispered that I loved them, and left before I could start crying. Kylie walked me to the door. "Tom, is everything okay? You're acting strange." "Just nervous about today. Big operation. I'll be fine." She kissed me one last time. "Be careful. Always." I walked out to my truck, started it, and pulled out of the driveway. I didn't look back. If I looked back, I wouldn't be able to leave. The drive to the northwest perimeter checkpoint took 20 minutes. The roads were empty, the reservation dark except for scattered lights from early risers. As I drove, I turned on my portable scanner and tuned to 88.1. The Wounded Knee transmission was still running, the night before the massacre. December 28, 1890. People trying to sleep in the cold, children crying, elders praying. They didn't know what was coming. They had no warning, no choice. I had both. I switched to 91.7. The 1973 occupation, March 2nd. Dennis Banks coordinating with lawyers, trying to negotiate a peaceful end before the federal forces came in shooting. "We need more time," someone was saying. "If we can just get the media here, show them what's happening, the government won't dare attack us." But they did attack, just not as hard as they'd planned. Because someone sacrificed, because someone broke the pattern. Now it was my turn. I arrived at the checkpoint at 04:25. There were already state police vehicles staging nearby, armored personnel carriers, officers in riot gear. The show of force was massive, overwhelming, designed to intimidate, to crush. Captain Roberts saw me and waved me over. "Iron Cloud, you're on the northwest perimeter like you requested. Your job is to keep civilian traffic away from the operational area. No one gets through except authorized law enforcement. Clear?" "Yes, sir." "The raid begins at 0500. Once it starts, maintain your position. Do not intervene unless specifically ordered. Understood?" "Understood." He handed me a radio. "This is the operational frequency. Monitor for updates." I took the radio, but I knew I wouldn't be listening to it. I had other frequencies to monitor. I drove to my assigned position, a small rise overlooking the Oseti-Sakoan camp about a quarter-mile away. I could see the tents and teepees, smoke rising from morning fires, people starting to wake up. They didn't know what was coming. They had no idea that in 30 minutes, hundreds of armed police would descend on them. I parked the truck and got out. The air was cold, maybe 20 degrees, and my breath made clouds in the darkness. The sky was starting to lighten in the east. I checked my watch, 0437. 23 minutes. I pulled out my portable scanner and turned it on. I needed to hear it one more time. I needed to be sure. I tuned to 98.9. My future voice was there, waiting. "Kevin, it's time. I'm here. I'm ready." "Are you really ready?" I looked toward the camp, toward the 314 people sleeping in their tents, not knowing that in a few minutes they would be under attack, not knowing that some of them wouldn't survive unless I did what I came here to do. "Yes, I'm ready." "Then listen carefully. You need to move now, before the raid starts. You need to position yourself between the police staging area and the camp. You need to be visible, obvious. You need to be the first thing they see when they move forward." "Where exactly?" "There's a small hill, about 100 yards from your current position, directly in line with the main approach route. Stand on top of it. Face the police. Make yourself the target." I looked around and spotted the hill. It was low, maybe 10 feet high, but enough to be visible. "Okay, I see it. When the police advance, don't move, don't run, don't fight. Just stand there. Sing your death song. That's important. You have to be singing." "Why?" "Because that's what warriors do. Because it confuses them, makes them hesitate. Because it breaks their momentum long enough for cooler heads to intervene." "What song should I sing?" "The one your grandmother taught you. The warrior song. You remember it." I did. "Hoka hei mitakuyepi." That's the one. Sing it loud. Sing it proud. Make them hear you. I checked my watch. 0442. 18 minutes. I need to go. If I'm going to be in position before the raid starts, I need to go now. Then go. And Kevin, thank you for your courage, for your sacrifice, for breaking the pattern. Will it work? Are you sure this will save them? I'm sure. I've seen both timelines. In the one where you don't go out there, 314 people die. In the one where you do, only one person dies. You. The math is clear. The math is clear, I repeated. But it's my life. It's 314 lives. You know which matters more. I did. God help me, I did. Goodbye, I said. Goodbye, Kevin. Walk in beauty. The transmission cut to static. I turned off the scanner and set it in the truck. I wouldn't need it anymore. I took off my gun belt, my tactical vest, everything that could be considered a weapon. I was going out there as a warrior, but an unarmed one, a sacrifice, not a fighter. I kept only my uniform, my badge, and my grandfather's medicine bundle that I always carried. The bundle held sage, sweetgrass, and a small eagle feather. Sacred items. I would die with them. I walked to the hill and climbed to the top. From here I could see everything. The camp to my west, starting to wake up, people emerging from tents. The police staging area to my east, officers checking weapons, APCs rumbling to life. I was directly in the middle, exactly where I needed to be. I checked my watch. 4:49, 11 minutes. I stood facing east toward the rising sun and the approaching police. I closed my eyes and prayed. Grandfather, hear me. I am Kevin Ironcloud, Hunk Papa Lakota, and I am about to do something that terrifies me. But I believe it's right. I believe it will save lives. Please walk with me. Please give me courage. Please let my sacrifice mean something. The wind picked up, cold against my face. In it, I heard voices. My grandmother, who had taught me the old ways. My grandfather, who had been a warrior. All my ancestors stretching back through time. They were with me. I opened my eyes and began to sing. Hoka hei, mitakuyepi, today is a good day to die. My voice was shaky at first, but it grew stronger. Hoka hei, oyate kinikte. Today the people will live. In the distance I heard engines starting. The police were beginning their advance. I kept singing. At exactly 0500, the raid began. The APCs rolled forward, flanked by dozens of officers in riot gear. The sound was enormous, engines roaring, equipment clanking, boots marching in formation. They were coming in hard, just like the transmission had warned, and there I was, standing on a hill directly in their path, singing my death song. The lead APC stopped about 50 yards from me. I could see the driver through the windshield, confusion on his face. He was speaking into his radio, probably asking command what to do about the crazy Indian standing in the way. More vehicles stopped. The formation broke. Officers were pointing at me, talking into radios, uncertain. I kept singing. A voice came over a loudspeaker. You on the hill, this is the North Dakota State Police. You are interfering with a law enforcement operation. Stand down and move away immediately. I didn't move. I kept singing. I repeat, stand down. Move away from the area or you will be arrested. Still, I didn't move. I was a statue, a monument, a living prayer. Behind me, I heard commotion in the camp. People had noticed the police, noticed me, and were gathering. Voices calling out, asking what was happening. The loudspeaker again. This is your final warning. Stand down or we will use force. I stopped singing. In the sudden silence, I spoke loud enough for them to hear. My name is Kevin Ironcloud. I am a tribal police officer. I am unarmed, and I am standing here to ask you not to do this. These people are protesting peacefully. They are protecting their water, their future. Do not attack them. Do not repeat Wounded Knee. Do not become the people who massacre the innocent. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then I heard a new voice over the radio frequency. Loud and clear through the scanner someone in the camp had turned on. All units, hold position. Do not advance. Command is reassessing the situation. The formation stopped completely. I could see officers talking to each other, pointing at me, uncertain what to do with this one unarmed man who wouldn't move. I started singing again. Hokahei mitakuyepi, today is a good day to die. And then from the camp behind me, I heard other voices joining mine. Water protectors taking up the song, amplifying it, turning my solo into a chorus. Hokahei oyate kinikte, today the people will live. The sound swelled. Dozens of voices, then hundreds, all singing the warrior song, all standing with me. I felt tears on my face. I wasn't alone. I'd never been alone. The loudspeaker crackled again, but this time it was a different voice, calmer, more measured. This is Commander Harrison. We are standing down. Repeat, all units stand down. Do not advance. We are calling for negotiators. I couldn't believe it. It was working. The pattern was breaking. I kept singing. Hours passed. The police maintained their position, but they didn't advance. Negotiators arrived, set up a command tent, started talking with representatives from the camp. News helicopters circled overhead. By mid-morning, the standoff had become national news. I stood on that hill the entire time, singing when I had the voice, praying when I didn't. People from the camp brought me water, blankets, food, but I didn't leave my position. Not until the negotiators reached an agreement. At 13:47 hours, Commander Harrison walked across the distance between the police line and my hill. He was alone, unarmed, his hands visible. He climbed the hill and stood next to me. Officer Iron Cloud. Commander, that was the bravest thing I've ever seen. Or the craziest. I'm not sure which. Maybe both. We've reached an agreement. The governor is suspending the eviction order pending further review. The camps can stay through the winter. We're pulling back. I felt my knees go weak. It worked. It actually worked. What worked? I broke the pattern. Harrison looked at me strangely. What pattern? The one that says we have to die. The one that says resistance must end in massacre. The one that's been repeating since 1890. You're not making sense. I know. But I'm alive, and they're alive, and that's all that matters. Harrison nodded slowly. For what it's worth, you probably prevented something terrible today. When we got the order to advance, some of the guys were eager. Too eager. It could have gotten ugly. But seeing you out here, standing alone, it made us stop and think. Made us remember we're dealing with people, not problems. Thank you for listening. Thank you for standing. Not many people would have that kind of courage. Harrison walked back to the police line. Within an hour, the APCs were pulling out, the officers standing down. The raid was over before it really began. I stayed on the hill until sunset, watching the police withdraw, watching the camp celebrate. People came up to shake my hand, to thank me, to tell me I was a hero. I didn't feel like a hero. I felt exhausted, confused, and relieved. I also felt wrong, because, according to the transmissions, I was supposed to die today. The pattern was supposed to break through my sacrifice, but I was still alive, and the raid had ended peacefully anyway. What did that mean? At 1800 hours, I finally left the hill and walked back to my truck. My body ached from standing in the cold all day. My voice was hoarse from singing, but I was alive. I got in the truck and just sat there for a while trying to process what had happened. Then I remembered the scanner. I turned it on and tuned to 98.9, the frequency where my future voice had been calling from. Static. I fine-tuned it, scanning around the frequency. Nothing. The transmission was gone. My future voice, the one that had been warning me, guiding me, telling me I had to die, was silent. I checked the other frequencies. 88.1, wounded knee, 1890. Silent. 91.7, the 1973 occupation. Silent. 95.3, the modern camp chatter. That one was still active, people celebrating the police withdrawal. But the historical transmissions were gone. The pattern had broken. The time speaker had completed its purpose. The voices from the past and future had fallen silent because they were no longer needed. I had done it. Somehow, without dying, I had broken the pattern. Or had I? I pulled out my phone and checked the date. December 4th, 2016. But which December 4th? The one where I was supposed to die, or a different one? Had the timeline changed? Was I living in a new reality now, one where the sacrifice wasn't required? I drove home in a daze, my mind spinning with questions I couldn't answer. Kylie met me at the door, throwing her arms around me. "Tom, we saw it on the news. You were on every channel, standing on that hill, singing. Everyone's saying you're a hero." "I'm not a hero. I just did what needed to be done." "The kids are so proud of you. They've been telling everyone their dad saved 300 people. 300, not 314. Close, but not exact." "Can I see them?" I spent the evening with my family, accepting their congratulations, downplaying my role, trying to feel normal. But something was off. I couldn't put my finger on it, but something felt wrong. That night, after everyone was asleep, I went to the garage one last time. I turned on the radio and scanned through all the frequencies. All silent except for normal broadcasts. I sat there in the dark, staring at the equipment, trying to understand what had happened. Then, at exactly midnight, the scanner burst to life. A voice I recognized, my voice, but not from the future, from right now. "Kevin, if you're hearing this, it means you survived. It means you didn't die today. It means the timeline changed." "Who is this?" "I'm you. But from the original timeline, the one where you died. I'm calling from December 4th, 2017, 1 year after your death. Except in your timeline, you didn't die. In your timeline, you broke the pattern without sacrificing yourself. You found another way." "How?" "I don't know. I didn't think it was possible. But somehow you did it. You stood on that hill, you sang your death song, and the police stopped. They actually stopped. In your timeline, they didn't stop? In my timeline, I hesitated. I wasn't on the hill when the raid started. By the time I got there, it was too late. The police were already in the camp. People were dying. I tried to intervene, tried to stop it. But I was just one person. 314 people died, including me. I was trampled in the chaos. So, you've been calling me from that timeline? Warning me?" "Yes. Trying to make sure you didn't make the same mistake I did. Trying to make sure you had the courage to be there, to stand firm, to break the pattern. And you did. You actually did. What happens now? I don't know. The timeline has split. In my reality, the second Wounded Knee massacre happened. In yours, it didn't. Two different futures branching from the same moment. And I think this means I can finally rest. My purpose is complete. I warned you, guided you, made sure you didn't fail the way I failed. Now I can let go. Wait, don't go. I have so many questions." "You'll figure it out, Kevin. You're smarter than I was. Braver. You found a way to break the pattern without dying. That's incredible. That's what we've been trying to do for centuries. Break the pattern of violence without perpetuating it. You did that." The transmission started to fade. "Goodbye, Kevin. Live the life I never got to live. love your family, protect your people, and remember that time is not a line, it's a frequency. And if you're ever lost, just tune in. The ancestors are always broadcasting, you just have to know how to listen. Static. Silence. I sat there for a long time, processing everything. I had broken the pattern. I had saved 300 people without dying. I had changed the timeline itself, but the cost wasn't zero. Somewhere, in another reality, another version of me had died so that this version could succeed. Another timeline where the massacre happened, where the pattern continued. I was living in the better timeline, the one where we won. But I would never forget the other one, the one where we lost. I would carry that knowledge with me, the weight of what could have been, what had been in another reality. And I would spend the rest of my life trying to honor the sacrifice of the other Kevin, the one who died so I could live. I turned off the radio and went back inside. Kylie was awake, waiting for me in bed. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah, I think so. Just processing everything. You were amazing today. You know that, right? You stood up to a whole army. You protected those people. You're a hero. I just did what needed to be done. That's what heroes say." I climbed into bed and held her close. Tomorrow, I would go back to work. I would face the questions, the interviews, the attention. I would try to explain what had happened on that hill, why I had done what I did. But tonight, I was just grateful to be alive, to be here with my family in a timeline where 300 people didn't die, where the pattern broke, where history changed, and somewhere, on a frequency that no longer broadcast, a version of me who hadn't made it smiled and finally found peace. The time speaker had completed its mission. The pattern was broken, and the massacres would never happen again. At least not today. At least not here. And that would have to be enough. 9 years passed after that day on the hill. 9 years of living the life I thought I'd never have. 9 years of watching my kids grow up, of holding Kylie every night, of doing the work I loved. 9 years of believing I'd broken the pattern for good. The pipeline was eventually completed despite everything we'd done. It crossed under the Missouri River just like we'd feared. But something else happened too. The movement we started at Standing Rock spread across the country. Hundreds of communities stood up against pipelines, against corporations, against the assumption that they had no voice. We didn't win everything, but we won something. We won the belief that resistance was possible. Kylie and I stayed together. Our kids grew into good people, strong people. My son wanted to be a lawyer, to fight for treaty rights. My daughter became an activist organizing protests at her high school. She'd been 9 years old when she watched me stand on that hill, and it changed her forever. I went back to work the day after the standoff. Captain Roberts didn't know what to say to me. I'd disobeyed orders, abandoned my post, and somehow become a national hero. The media called me brave. The protesters called me a warrior. The police just called me complicated. I kept my head down and did my job. I patrolled the same roads, responded to the same calls, tried to be the bridge between my badge and my people. It wasn't always easy. Some cops thought I'd betrayed them. Some protesters thought I hadn't gone far enough. But I did what I could. And every night, I went home to the garage and turned on the radio. For 9 years, the frequencies stayed silent. No voices from 1890, no transmissions from 1973, no warnings from the future. Just normal broadcasts, weather reports, news updates, the ordinary hum of the electromagnetic spectrum. I told myself that was good. It meant the pattern was broken. It meant the time speaker had finished its work. But deep down, I knew better. Patterns don't break. They just wait. It happened on December 4th, 2025. Exactly 9 years after the day I didn't die. I was on patrol, same routes I'd driven for 15 years when my scanner started acting strange. Static burst across all frequencies, then cleared into a voice I didn't recognize. A young woman speaking urgent Lakota. The transmission was broken, degraded, but I caught pieces of it. She was calling for help. She said police were coming. She said people were going to die. I grabbed the microphone and tried to respond, but she couldn't hear me. The transmission was one way, like all the others had been. I was listening to something that had already happened, or was about to happen, or was happening in a timeline I couldn't reach. I pulled over and fine-tuned the scanner. The woman's voice faded, replaced by others. Multiple voices, multiple timelines, all broadcasting on frequencies that shouldn't exist. At 88.1, I heard Wounded Knee again, but not 1890 this time. A different year, a different tragedy. Same pattern. At 91.7, voices from protests I didn't recognize. Different locations, different decades, all ending the same way. Violence, massacre, the pattern reasserting itself. And at 98.9, I heard something that made my hand shake. My own voice, but older, weaker, calling from somewhere I couldn't identify. The transmission was faint, barely audible over the static, but I heard enough to understand. I was dying. Not now, not today, but soon. And I was trying to warn someone, trying to pass on what I'd learned about the frequencies, about the pattern, about how to break it. I turned off the scanner and sat there in my truck staring at the dashboard. The scanner crackled again, and a new voice came through. Old, weary, but familiar. Gary kills thunder. But Gary had died 3 years ago. Kevin, you're hearing this because the time speaker has chosen you again. Gary, how? I'm not calling from the past, grandson. I'm calling from everywhere. When you die, when your body returns to the earth, your spirit becomes part of the frequency. You become one of the voices that warn, that guide, that try to break the pattern. You're saying you're dead? I'm saying I'm transformed. And soon, you will be too. What do you mean? Check 98.9. With shaking hands, I tuned to the frequency that had carried my future voice 9 years ago. A young man was speaking, mid-20s, Lakota accent. My name is Jacob Iron Cloud. I'm calling from Standing Rock, December 4th, 2034. I'm about to do something that terrifies me. My grandfather did it 9 years before I was born. Stood between the police and the people. Broke the pattern. I thought that was the end of it. But the pattern came back. It always comes back. And now, it's my turn to break it again. Jacob, my grandson, my son's son, not yet born in my timeline. Please, if anyone can hear this, if my grandfather can hear this, tell me I'm making the right choice. Tell me it's worth it. Tell me that one person can still make a difference. I grabbed the microphone. Jacob, I'm here. I can hear you. Grandfather, is that really you? It's me. Jacob, what's happening in 2034? What are you about to do? The same thing you did. The same thing Joseph Stunts did in 1973. The same thing warriors have been doing for centuries. I'm going to stand between my people and violence. I'm going to break the pattern. Jacob, you don't have to die. I didn't die. I stood on that hill and I lived. I know. You lived, and you had 9 more years with grandmother, with Dad and Aunt Lisa. You got to meet me when I was born. You got to teach me about the radio, about the frequencies, about the time speaker. And then you died, grandfather, on December 4th, 2023. Exactly 7 years after you broke the pattern. I felt the world tilt. What? No, I'm alive. I'm here, It's 2025. I'm alive. In my timeline, you died, heart attack. But before you died, you told me about the radio, about the transmissions, about how time is a frequency. You told me that someday I'd hear them too, that someday I'd have to make the same choice you made. Jacob, listen to me. You don't have to do this. There's always another way. Is there? You thought you broke the pattern, but it just moved, grandfather. Moved to a different place, a different time, a different issue. Bears ears instead of Standing Rock. Climate refugees instead of pipeline protesters. Same pattern, different manifestation, and someone has to break it every time, again and again. That's not fair. That's not how it should work. But it's how it does work. The pattern is bigger than us, older than us. It's been running since before Wounded Knee, before the Trail of Tears, before colonization. It's the pattern that says violence is the answer to resistance, and the only way to break it is sacrifice, again and again. I sat there in my truck, tears streaming down my face. I don't want you to die, Jacob. I don't even know you yet, but I don't want you to die. You taught me to be brave, grandfather. Even though you died when I was 12, even though I only had you for a short time, you taught me that sometimes one person has to stand up, has to say no, has to break the pattern. There has to be another way. Maybe there is. Maybe someday we'll find it, but not today. Today, I have to do what you did, what Joseph Stuntz did, what every warrior who ever chose the many over the one did. I have to be the sacrifice that breaks this cycle of violence. Jacob, please. I love you, grandfather. Thank you for showing me the way. Thank you for being brave first. It makes it easier to be brave now. Jacob. The transmission cut to static. I sat there in my truck on the side of the road, shaking, crying, unable to process what I'd just heard. My grandson who wasn't born yet, calling from 2034, about to die. Because I'd taught him to. Because I'd shown him the pattern. Because I'd broken it once, making him believe he could break it again. The scanner crackled again. Gary's voice. You understand now, Kevin? Understand what? That we're trapped? That the pattern never really breaks? That we just keep sacrificing ourselves over and over for temporary victories? I understand that you're angry, that you feel betrayed, that you thought your sacrifice meant something permanent. Didn't it? It meant everything. For 9 years, 300 people lived who would have died. For 9 years, your family had you. For 9 years, the movement you started changed the world. That's not nothing, Kevin. But it wasn't enough. It's never enough. That's the tragedy. But it's also the heroism. Knowing it won't last forever. Knowing the pattern will return, and standing up anyway. Breaking it anyway. For however long it stays broken. So we're condemned to this. Forever? Generation after generation watching our children and grandchildren sacrifice themselves. No. We're blessed with this. The opportunity to choose courage over comfort. The chance to save lives, even temporarily. The honor of being the ones who stand when others can't. I don't feel blessed. I feel cursed. Most heroes do. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the radio out the window, drive home, quit the force, pretend none of this had ever happened. But I couldn't. Because now I knew. I knew that in 9 years, in a timeline I might not live to see, my grandson would stand where I stood, would sing where I sang, would sacrifice what I almost sacrificed, and I had to prepare him for it. I had to teach him about the radio, about the frequencies, about the time speaker, about how to be brave when everything in you wants to run. I tuned the scanner back to 98.9. Jacob, if you can still hear me, I understand. I'm proud of you. You're braver than I ever was, and I promise you, I'll make these 9 years count. I'll raise your father to raise you. I'll teach you everything I know, and when the time comes, you'll be ready. Static. Then faintly, thank you, grandfather. I'll make you proud. You already have. The transmission ended. I sat there for a long time, then started the truck and drove home. Kylie was in the Kit Wild when I came in. She took one look at my face and knew something was wrong. Tom, what happened? I heard Jacob, our grandson, from 2034. We don't have a grandson. Our son isn't even in college yet. We will, and he will, and he's going to need us. He's going to need to know about the radio. I told her everything. About the new transmissions, about the pattern repeating, about Jacob's message from 9 years in the future. She listened silently, then held me while I cried. What do we do? She asked finally. We live. We love our family. We prepare them. And when December 4th, 2034 comes, we make sure Jacob knows he's not alone. That every warrior who ever stood against the pattern is standing with him. And then we lose him. Maybe, or maybe he finds another way. Maybe he breaks it for good this time. Do you believe that? I have to. The alternative is despair. Over the next 9 years, I did what I'd promised. I taught my son about the radio, about the frequencies, about the time speaker. When Jacob was born in 2027, I held him and whispered the warrior songs. When he was old enough to understand, I told him about Standing Rock, about the pattern, about the choice. I didn't tell him he was going to die. I just taught him to be brave. And on December 4th, 2023, exactly 7 years after the day I didn't die, my heart gave out. I was home, in bed with Kylie, and I felt it coming. The tightness in my chest, the numbness in my arm. Kylie, I managed to say, the radio. Check 98.9. She grabbed the scanner from my bedside table and tuned it. Jacob's voice came through, 14-year-old Jacob, calling from 2034. Grandfather, I can hear you. Your frequency is fading. You're dying. I know, I whispered. Before you go, I need to know. Did it mean something, your sacrifice? My sacrifice, all of it? I looked at Kylie, at the life we'd built, at the family we'd raised. Yes, it meant everything. It means everything. Break the pattern, Jacob, however you can, for however long you can. That's all we can do. I will, I promise. Good. Now let me tell you one more thing about the frequencies, about how they work. I spent my last moments teaching my grandson how to tune the radio, how to find the voices from the past and the future, how to become a time speaker himself. And then the frequency that was Kevin Ironcloud faded to static and transformed into something else. Jacob Ironcloud stood on a hill overlooking the Bears Ears National Monument, facing a line of National Guard soldiers. He was 21 years old, unarmed, and singing his death song. Behind him, 300 protesters waited, praying for a miracle. In his pocket, his grandfather's radio crackled with voices from across time. All the warriors who had stood before him, all the sacrifices that had bought temporary peace, all the broken patterns that had reformed. And one new voice, joining the chorus. His grandfather's voice, calling from wherever time speakers go when they die. You're not alone, Jacob. You've never been alone. We're all here. Every warrior who ever chose courage over comfort, every person who ever stood between violence and the vulnerable. We're all broadcasting on the same frequency. and we always will be. Jacob closed his eyes and sang louder. The National Guard stopped, hesitated, pulled back. The pattern broke again. For now, for this moment, for these 300 lives, and somewhere, on a frequency that connects all moments, all timelines, all possibilities, Kevin Ironcloud smiled and added his voice to the chorus. The time speakers were eternal. The pattern would always return, but so would the warriors who broke it, again and again, forever. As long as there were people willing to stand on hills and sing their death songs, as long as there were voices willing to call through time, as long as there was courage, the frequency would never fall silent. My name is Jacob Ironcloud. I'm 32 years old, and I'm writing this from a hospital bed. The doctors say I have maybe a week left. Cancer, probably from the uranium mining my great-grandfather's generation was exposed to. The pattern finds new ways to manifest, but I wanted to write this down before I go. This story of my grandfather, of the radio, of the frequencies that connect all moments. I wanted people to know that patterns can be broken, not permanently maybe, not forever, but for moments, for lives, for generations. My grandfather broke the certes. I broke it again in 2034. And someday, maybe my daughter, maybe your child, maybe someone neither of us will ever meet, will break it again. Because that's what we do. We stand, we sing, we sacrifice. We break the pattern however we can, for however long we can. And then we become part of the frequency, part of the chorus that calls through time, warning the future, honoring the past, living in the eternal present of the time speaker. If you're reading this, if you hear the voices on the radio, if you're standing on your own hill facing your own cavalry, you're not alone. We're all here, all of us who ever stood, all of us who ever sang, all of us who ever chose the many over the one, tuned to 98.9. We're broadcasting, we're always broadcasting, listen. And when your time comes, add your voice to ours. The frequency is waiting. The pattern is always waiting. But so are we, always, forever. Hokahe. Today is a good day to break the pattern.